There is a moment somewhere between exhaustion and rest when the body surrenders. The muscles release their tension, the breath slows. The mind, which has been carrying the weight of the day, finally sets it down. For most of human history, this moment came naturally, aided not by pharmaceuticals or sleep-tracking devices, but by the quiet wisdom of the earth itself, by roots pulled from rocky soil, by resins carried across desert trade routes, by leaves steeped in water and consumed in the stillness of the evening, by remedies so ancient that some of them appear in the oldest recorded texts in human history. The Bible is not a medical textbook, but for those who read it carefully, who move slowly through its landscapes and listen to its silences, it reveals something extraordinary. Woven through its narratives, its laws, its poetry, and its prophecy is a detailed and consistent picture of a world that understands the human body with remarkable precision. A world that knew which plants calmed the mind, which roots quieted physical pain, which fragrances prepared the spirit for rest, which foods, eaten in the evening by lamplight, worked silently through the night to restore what the day had taken. These were not accidental discoveries. They were the accumulated knowledge of generations, tested across centuries of human experience, refined by priests and farmers, by mothers and healers, by people who had nothing but the earth and the sky and an extraordinary capacity for observation. And what modern science is now finding, compound by compound, receptor by receptor, is that these ancient people were right. Not approximately right, not right in a general feel-good sense. Biochemically, pharmacologically, measurably right. This is the story of 10 biblical remedies for sleep that worked for thousands of years, not because people believed they would work, because they did, and because every single one of them is still available to you today. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the ancient world at night, not the comfortable darkness of a modern bedroom with its temperature control and blackout curtains, the darkness of a stone house in the hill country of Judea 2,000 years ago. The air carries the smell of oil lamps, of animals nearby, of soil and harvest. Outside, the sky is the kind of absolute black that city dwellers have never seen, thick with stars, completely silent except for wind and the occasional distant sound of an animal. Inside, a family settles towards sleep, and before they do, they prepare. They have always prepared. Their grandparents prepared. Their grandparents' grandparents prepared. The preparation is older than any of them can trace, and it begins with the plants. The first remedy is hyssop. It appears more than a dozen times in Scripture, from the Passover narrative in Exodus chapter 12, verse 13, where it is used to apply blood to the doorposts of Hebrew homes, to Psalms 51, verse 7, where David writes, "Purge me with hyssop and I shall be clean," to the moment at Golgotha where a sponge soaked in sour wine is lifted to Jesus on a branch of hyssop. This small, shrubby plant with its clusters of tiny purple flowers and its sharp, clean fragrance was everywhere in the ancient biblical world. It grew in the rocky crevices of walls and hillsides throughout Israel and the surrounding region. So accessible that it was used by the poorest and the most powerful alike. What ancient healers observed was that hyssop prepared in a warm infusion and consumed in the evening quieted the kind of physical restlessness that prevented sleep. Modern analysis tells us why. The volatile oils in hyssop, particularly pinocamphone and isopinocamphone, demonstrate antispasmodic and mild sedative effects. For people who worked with their bodies from sunrise to sunset, whose muscles carried the accumulated tension of plowing, building, carrying, and grinding, this plant offered something irreplaceable. Not the chemical blankness of sedation, but a gentle easing, a loosening, the physical equivalent of setting down a weight you had been carrying so long you had forgotten it was there. The method ancient practitioners used was simple, and it remains the most effective method today. 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried hyssop herbs steeped in hot water for 10 minutes. Consumed approximately 30 minutes before sleep. The warmth of the liquid itself aids the relaxation process, while the volatile compounds are absorbed through digestion and begin their work on the nervous system within the hour. Hyssop is still widely available today as a dried herb, as a loose-leaf tea, and as an essential oil. The dried herb can be found in health food stores, herbal apothecaries, and online suppliers. For those who prefer a more direct application, hyssop essential oil diluted in a carrier oil, and applied to the chest or the soles of the feet before sleep carries some of the same antispasmodic benefits through topical absorption. The ancient world had access to this plant by walking out the door. The modern world has access to it with a single search. The second remedy takes us into one of the most significant moments in the history of medicine, though it was not recognized as such at the time. In the 1st century, as the biblical world was alive with trade and travel and the movement of people across vast distances, Greek physicians were documenting the properties of a root so powerful that Galen, one of the most influential medical writers of the ancient world, recommended it for patients who could not sleep. The Roman Emperor Nero's physician prescribed it. It was traded across the same routes that carried frankincense and myrrh. It was known, used, and trusted across every culture that bordered the biblical world, and the people described in the pages of Scripture would have encountered it throughout their lives. That root is valerian, and what makes its story one of the most remarkable in the entire history of herbal medicine is not how old it is, but what happened in a modern laboratory when scientists finally decided to understand why it worked. Researchers isolating the active compounds in valerian root discovered something that stopped them. The primary compound, valerianic acid, works by binding to GABA receptors in the human brain. GABA receptors are the precise neurological targets of benzodiazepine drugs, the class of pharmaceuticals that includes diazepam and the most widely prescribed sleep medications in the modern world. Ancient healers had been hitting those exact receptor targets for 500 years before the pharmaceutical industry existed. They had no knowledge of brain chemistry, no laboratory equipment, no clinical trials. They had a root, a fire, a clay vessel of water, and 5 centuries of watching what happened to people who drank the preparation before sleep. That was enough. To use valerian today the way the ancient world used it, prepare the dried root as a tea or take it as a standardized extract capsule 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. The dried root, capsule supplements, and tinctures are available in virtually every health food store in the world. It is one of the most commercially produced herbal sleep supplements on the market today. Dozens of clinical studies have confirmed what Galen documented 2,000 years ago. The root works. It has always worked. The only thing that changed is that we now know exactly why. There is a verse in the Song of Solomon that stops the careful reader with its sudden, overwhelming sensory power. While the king sat at his table, the text read, "My spikenard sent forth its fragrance." In the ancient world, spikenard was among the most expensive substances on earth. The oil derived from the roots of Nardostachys jatamansi traveled thousands of miles along ancient trade routes to reach the Mediterranean. It passed through the hands of merchants in Arabia and Egypt before arriving in the markets of Jerusalem, where a single jar of it represented a laborer's annual wage. It appears again in the Gospel of John, when Mary of Bethany breaks open an alabaster jar of pure spikenard and anoints Jesus' feet. The room, John tells us, was filled with the fragrance. Judas Iscariot complains about the waste. Jesus silences him. This was not perfume. This was medicine of the highest order, reserved for the most significant moments of human life. What modern pharmacological research has found in spikenard is extraordinary. Compounds in the root directly influence serotonin and dopamine pathways in the brain. Studies have demonstrated measurable reductions in anxiety and improvements in sleep architecture following exposure to spikenard preparations. The oil, when applied to the skin or hair or inhaled as a fragrance, produces a neurological response that prepares the brain for deep rest. In the ancient world, when a woman of means anointed herself with spikenard oil before lying down, she was not simply indulging in luxury. She was performing, with perfect precision and no knowledge of neuroscience whatsoever, an act of profound biological self-care. Today, spikenard essential oil is the most practical and accessible form of this remedy. Apply 2 to 3 drops to the wrists, the temples, or the back of the neck approximately 30 minutes before sleep. Or add 4 to 5 drops to a diffuser and allow it to fill the bedroom as you prepare for rest. A small bottle used with care will last for many months, and the quality of the sleep it supports has been documented across more than 2,000 years of consistent human use. When purchasing, look for pure Nardistachys jatamansi oil rather than blended or synthetic alternatives to ensure you are receiving the same compound that filled the room in Bethany. These are the remedies of the earth shared across time, still working for you today. Let us speak now about fire, about the act of burning something sacred and breathing in what remains. Frankincense is one of the most ancient substances in the biblical world. It is harvested by cutting into the bark of boswellia trees, which grow in the arid mountainous regions of Oman, Yemen, Somalia, and Eritrea. The tree bleeds a milky white resin that hardens into pale, golden tears. These tears were carried across the ancient world as one of its most precious commodities. When the Magi brought frankincense to Bethlehem, they were bringing something with a significance far beyond fragrance. They were bringing a substance used in the daily worship of the temple in Jerusalem, described in precise detail in the book of Exodus as part of the sacred incense formulation, a substance so central to religious life that it was forbidden by Mosaic law to be used for any common purpose. Every evening in the temple, the priests burned incense containing frankincense. Every synagogue, every household of means, every sacred space in the ancient biblical world was periodically filled with its smoke. And what the people in those spaces experienced, what the priests who burned it nightly experienced, was something that a research team at Johns Hopkins and Hebrew University identified in 2008. A compound in frankincense called insensol acetate activates ion channels in the brain that reduce anxiety and produce a calm, slightly altered state of consciousness. The researchers described this as a previously unknown biological mechanism for anti-anxiety effects. The priests of ancient Israel had been activating this mechanism every single evening for 1,000 years before that paper was published. For people who ended their day in prayer and worship, who breathed frankincense smoke as part of their nightly spiritual practice, the transition into sleep was being prepared neurologically before they ever lay down. The sacred and the pharmacological were not two different things. They were always the same thing. To bring this remedy into your own evenings, burn pure boswellia resin tears on a charcoal disc in a heat-safe vessel for 30 to 45 minutes before sleep, allowing the smoke to fill the room as you pray, read, or prepare for rest. Alternatively, diffuse pure frankincense essential oil for the same duration. 2 to 3 drops in a diffuser produces a concentration that is noticeable without being overwhelming. Frankincense essential oil and resin tears are available in health stores, spiritual supply shops, Christian bookstores, and online retailers. The resin in its raw form is the most traditional preparation and produces the closest experience to what the priests of the temple would have known. It is also among the most affordable options, as a small quantity of resin tears burns slowly and lasts far longer than the equivalent amount of essential oil. Mandrake is perhaps the most dramatic plant in all of biblical botany. In Genesis chapter 30, verses 14 through 16, Rachel and Leah negotiate with an intensity that reveals just how valuable this plant was considered to be. Leah's son Reuben finds mandrakes growing in the field during the wheat harvest. Rachel, who is barren and desperate for a child, wants them so badly that she trades a night with their shared husband Jacob in exchange for them. This is not a casual transaction. These are two women in a polygamous household negotiating over something they both understand to be extraordinarily powerful. The fact that this moment appears in Genesis, in the foundational narrative of the Hebrew people, tells us something important. The mandrake was not an obscure curiosity. It was central enough to the life of the ancient world that its appearance in the story of the patriarchs required no explanation to its original audience. The mandrake, known in Hebrew as dudaim, belongs to the same botanical family as nightshade and contains tropane alkaloids, including scopolamine and hyoscyamine, which have measurable sedative, analgesic, and hypnotic effects. In small, carefully managed doses, preparations from mandrake root were used across the ancient Near East as sleep aids and pain relievers. The plant's human-shaped root, which often grows in a form resembling the human body, added to its mystique and reinforced its association with the most intimate and powerful human experiences: fertility, pain, sleep, and the threshold between consciousness and unconsciousness. Please pay attention to the part because it carries the most important information and usage about mandrake. This is a plant that must be approached with complete honesty. The alkaloids found within the mandrake plant are extraordinarily powerful, and the margin between a therapeutic dose and a dangerous one is narrow. For this reason, mandrake is not a remedy for casual home preparation. It is mentioned here because its presence in the biblical narrative and the ancient pharmacological record is significant and cannot be omitted from any honest account of what the ancient world used for sleep. Modern herbalists and naturopathic practitioners with specific training may work with mandrake in controlled clinical contexts. For the general reader, this remedy belongs in the category of historical knowledge rather than personal practice. What it tells us, more than anything, is that the ancient world took sleep seriously enough to use its most powerful botanical tools in service of it. Now consider the fig tree. It is the third plant named in the entire Bible, appearing in Genesis 3 verse 7, when Adam and Eve use its leaves to cover themselves. By the time Jesus curses a fig tree in the Gospel of Mark, an act that still puzzles biblical scholars with its apparent suddenness, the fig has been present in human civilization for at least 11,000 years. Archaeological evidence suggests that figs were among the very first plants deliberately cultivated by human beings, predating wheat and barley by centuries. There is something quietly profound about that. The fig was not just food. It was the beginning of the human relationship with the cultivated earth. In the ancient biblical world, figs were eaten daily, dried and stored through winter, pressed into cakes for travel, and consumed in the evening as part of the final meal before sleep. What those ancient fig eaters were consuming, without any awareness of nutritional biochemistry, was a food containing significant concentrations of tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin and melatonin. They were also consuming magnesium, which plays a critical role in the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for the body's rest and recovery state. And they were consuming potassium, which reduces muscle tension and supports the kind of physical relaxation that makes deep sleep possible. To use this remedy today, eat 2 to 3 fresh or dried figs as part of your evening meal, approximately 1 hour before sleep. The tryptophan, magnesium, and potassium content works most effectively when consumed with food rather than on an empty stomach, giving the body time to process and convert the nutrients as the evening progresses. Fresh figs are seasonal in most regions, but dried figs are available year-round in virtually every grocery store in the world. They require no preparation, no specialist knowledge, and no expense beyond the cost of the fruit itself. A family in ancient Jerusalem eating figs by lamplight before settling down for the night was preparing their neurochemistry and their physiology for rest with a precision that a modern nutritionist would recognize and fully endorse. Now we arrive at a moment in the Gospel of John that deserves more than the single sentence most readers give it. It is after the crucifixion. The crowd has dispersed. The authorities are satisfied. And into this terrible silence walks a man named Nicodemus. He is a Pharisee. He is a member of the Jewish ruling council. Earlier in John's Gospel, he came to Jesus secretly, by night, unwilling to be seen associating with a man his colleagues considered dangerous. But now, in the aftermath of the execution, when association with Jesus carries the most risk it has ever carried, Nicodemus comes openly. He comes carrying myrrh and aloes, not a small quantity brought as a token of respect. 100 pounds of it. The weight of that detail, the sheer physical quantity, the public commitment it represents, the grief and the courage it took to carry it to the tomb, is one of the most humanly devastating moments in the entire New Testament. The aloe Nicodemus carried was almost certainly derived from aloe vera, or a closely related species, used throughout the ancient Near East and Egypt for skin healing, wound treatment, digestive support, and the treatment of inflammation. In the context of sleep, its role operates through the body rather than directly through the mind. Modern research has found that the compounds in aloe vera, particularly atsemanon and anthraquinones, have demonstrable anti-inflammatory and adaptogenic effects. Chronic inflammation is now understood to be one of the primary biological disruptors of sleep quality. When the body is in a state of inflammatory stress, the signals that regulate the sleep cycle are disrupted, producing shallow, fragmented, unrestorative sleep. Ancient people who used aloe regularly were, across the full span of their lives, maintaining a lower inflammatory baseline that supported consistent and restorative sleep. The benefit was not dramatic or immediate. It was steady, cumulative, and profound. To use aloe for sleep today, consume 1 to 2 ounces of pure inner leaf aloe vera juice in the evening, or take it in capsule supplement form. Pure aloe vera juice and gel are available in most health food stores. Look for preparations that specify inner leaf only and are free from aloin. Applied topically to the skin before sleep, aloe also supports the overnight skin repair processes that are one of the body's primary restoration activities during deep rest. Nicodemus carried 100 pounds of it to honor a man he loved. A bottle of it costs less than a cup of coffee. There is a plant in the Bible whose very name is synonymous with suffering, and yet whose medical history reveals something that turns that reputation completely on its head. Wormwood appears in Scripture in contexts of judgment and bitterness. In Proverbs, the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, but her end is bitter as wormwood. In Lamentations, the devastated writer cries that God has filled him with bitterness. In Revelation, a star called wormwood poisons the waters. And yet here is what almost no one who reads those passages knows. In the same ancient world, it was simultaneously one of the most widely used medicinal plants. Egyptian medical papyri document its use. Greek physicians prescribed it. Roman writers catalogued its properties. Across the ancient Near East, wormwood was used specifically for something the Bible acknowledges as one of the great obstacles to rest: physical suffering, parasitic illness. Artemisia absinthium, the plant known as wormwood, contains compounds including absinthin and artabsin that affect the central nervous system. In a population where digestive pain was a nightly reality, a plant that addressed the underlying physical cause of sleeplessness was not just medicine. It was mercy. It did not sedate the sufferer into unconsciousness. It removed what was preventing sleep in the first place, which is a more sophisticated therapeutic approach than simple sedation. Wormwood is available today as a tincture and should be used with significant caution. It is best used under the guidance of an experienced herbalist. Consider for a moment what it would mean to sleep inside a building made entirely of cedar, to breathe its air every morning and every evening and every night. To have that fragrance so completely integrated into the rhythm of your life that you no longer consciously registered it, the way a person who lives near the sea eventually stops noticing the salt in the air, even as it continues to work on them. This was the daily reality of the priests who served in Solomon's temple. The temple was lined throughout its inner chambers with cedar from Lebanon. Every wall, every ceiling, every surface of the inner sanctuary. Cedar was chosen for its beauty, its durability, and its resistance to decay. Cedar wood contains cedral, a sesquiterpene compound that has been shown in multiple studies to decrease both heart rate and respiratory rate when inhaled, producing the precise physiological signature of parasympathetic nervous system activation, the state the body enters when it is preparing for deep rest. Priests who spent their lives in cedar-lined spaces were receiving a consistent low-level sedative benefit with every breath they took in the house of God. Ancient language for a biological reality. Cedarwood essential oil is today one of the most affordable and widely available essential oils. Add 2 to 3 drops to a diffuser and run it for an hour before sleep. The bedroom becomes, in a modest but measurable way, something like what the inner chambers of the temple must have felt like to the priests who served there. Quiet, grounded, set apart from the noise of the world. Conducive to rest in a way that is difficult to fully explain, but remarkably easy to experience. There is a moment in the book of Exodus that most readers pass over without pausing. When the Israelites first encountered manna in the wilderness, the Bible tells us that it was white like coriander seed. This is not a poetic flourish. It is a precise visual reference that assumes the reader knows exactly what coriander seed looks like. The people hearing this description were people for whom coriander was as familiar as salt. It was in their kitchens, their gardens, their medicine preparations, and their daily food. It had been found in Egyptian tombs. It appears in ancient Ayurvedic texts. It was used consistently across every culture that touched the biblical world. Coriander contains linalool, the same primary aromatic compound found in lavender. that has demonstrated effects on serotonin pathways and sleep architecture in modern clinical studies. What makes this particularly significant is the quantity in which coriander was consumed in the ancient world. This was not a supplement taken in measured doses. It was a daily dietary constituent, present in the food at nearly every meal. The linalool content of a daily diet rich in coriander would have maintained a steady neurochemical environment across the entire population that consumed it, contributing quietly and without fanfare to the conditions that support natural rest. The simplest way to use coriander as a sleep remedy today is exactly the way the ancient world used it. Incorporate it generously into your evening meal as a spice and a garnish. For a more targeted application, prepare 1 teaspoon of freshly crushed coriander seeds, steeped in hot water for 10 minutes and drink it 30 minutes before sleep. Coriander is available in every grocery store on earth as both fresh herb and dried seed, and it is among the least expensive plants on this entire list. It requires no specialist knowledge, no preparation beyond a basic kitchen, and no disruption to the daily routine. The ancient world made it a habit without thinking about it. The modern world can do the same. We have now reached the halfway point of this journey through the healing wisdom of the ancient biblical world. 10 remedies explored, 10 more still to come. If what you have heard so far has been valuable, this is the moment to subscribe to this channel, so that the second part of this journey reaches you the moment it is released. Leave a comment below telling us which of these 10 remedies you plan to try first. Every comment matters, and every conversation in this community is part of restoring the knowledge that was always meant to be shared. Every comment matters, and every conversation in this community is part of restoring the knowledge that was always meant to be shared. The remaining 10 remedies are among the most extraordinary on this entire list. Do not miss them. Sleep well and see you on the next one.